Hello and welcome to Cab Chat, episode 278. For those of you that actually doubt that we are the longest running taxi podcast in the world. So what are we going to be talking about in this week's episode, Tom?
Jamie, this week's episode of Cab Chat, what have we got? We've got buying versus owning a cab. That's the same thing, isn't it? Buying versus renting a cab. Basically spurred on by a gentleman I spoke with at the petrol station the other day who had some nice words about this podcast. We're going to also break down a little bit of my trip to New York, how the yellow taxis work in comparison to us. Curb partnering with Uber. So that's a big one. We've got your beef with the Highways Agency. And if we've got a bit of time, we're going to look at TfL's stealth cameras, bit of downturn in work over Easter, and Black Cab app. How has that been going?
Yes. So before we start, we've got to make a correction about the show that went out a couple of weeks ago where we recapped on the MaxiCab electric or MaxiCab taxi event that was down at Great Suffolk Street. Basically, I said that the plug-in hybrid did not charge itself. And I was told that by the staff at Allied Vehicles. Now, you would think that being a full domain agent, they would know what the vehicle was capable of. But there was a comment, and I thank the person, I can't remember who it was, that commented on the video that said that I'd got it wrong. And obviously I stand to be corrected where we are wrong. So, yes, and I have looked it up, the Ford plug-in hybrid PHEV does charge the battery whilst driving, although it will not fully recharge it, apparently, but it will charge it. Ideal vehicle for a taxi if you're working in a city is the plug-in hybrid, not necessarily the electric. I still don't believe in the electric version because with a 200-mile range, if you live anywhere outside of the city that you work in, pointless, big waste of time.
I think it can be done, but you just have to, your days just are then going to be very boring. There's less of the spontaneity, or like you do obviously the very extended, like long tours where you do a tour, drop someone off. If you're just going into town, doing your 8-9 hours and then going home, it could work, but it doesn't allow for the sporadic nature of the job, I guess.
No, and also, I mean, I went down to Stonehenge and Bath yesterday, and so I looked on I've downloaded all the street charging apps, and I might speak about that a little bit later, but so I looked to see if there was any charge points around Stonehenge, and there isn't any. And so I looked to see if there was any charge points in Bath, and there was only 4 coming up in the whole city of Bath, 4 charge points. And some of them were in the Morrisons in Bath. I think some of the others were in another supermarket. There's virtually no on-street charging in Bath, in the city of Bath at all. So, yeah, it would be totally unviable to do that, really.
Even if it was, could you imagine, like, saying to your guests, like, oh, by the way, I've got to go just charge the cab. Oh, sorry, there's someone on the charger. Can you wait a few hours to get back to London, you know?
Well, I did joke with the people yesterday. I said, you know, if the country runs out of petrol today, then we might be stuck in Bath, or we've got to go via service station to service station to service station and charge up on the way back every time, you know? So,
yeah, for fuel prices, that could be a whole topic in itself. But
it could be. I mean, fuel prices are going through the roof at the moment. So,
well, I mean, everyone's in this together. Everyone's got the same fuel price thing. There's nothing more we can impart on that. But as I guess, a time capsule of this podcast, currently, I filled up on the highway on the way home. It was 154.9 for per litre of petrol. Not too sure what diesel was, but yeah, about 180 something.
Which garage did you go into on the highway?
That was the one on the north side. The I don't know if it's a co-op / Texaco.
I used the other one.
But I was going home though, so
It's all right. You can turn right.
Yeah, true, true. I'm
Right, and
lazy,
then
mate.
turn
I'm
right
very
again.
lazy. Yeah, the jet's generally cheaper, but
So
yeah,
rather than turning right, you'd rather pay like 7p a litre more.
yeah, just burning money, mate. Pow, 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 pow.
Yeah, that's the attitude of a rich YouTuber.
I
Look,
know, I don't know. It wasn't. I think when I came in the other day, it wasn't too much different. I think it was about 154 there. I was quite surprised because in everything all being raised up in price, there's kind of normally the jets are obviously quite cheap, like quite a far, you know, comparison cheaper, but it wasn't that much cheaper than what I've been sort of spying around. So I think it was quite a similar price.
do you know the ones that have actually surprised me is the BP service stations that are like motorway service stations and places like that.
Hmm.
They haven't actually been that expensive. Like there's one in Chippenham that I fill up on the way back out of Bath because I go via Castle Combe, and normally it's like the most expensive garage in the area, and their petrol is at 152.
Yeah,
So it's the same as
they've
like
just been expensive for so long they don't know what to
yeah
do.
yeah. They've been really really expensive 152, and most BP stations seem to be around about the same price everywhere, whereas Shell and Esso are all over the place, really. I mean, the local garage that I normally use, they was quite cheap because they got a co-op across the road. And then as soon as it all started kicked off, they put their prices up so much that I don't think they've had a tanker go in there yet because I don't think they've run out of petrol or diesel because their prices. I mean, they put their price up on diesel to like in the first week to 189 a litre. And petrol
Jeez.
was like 157 a litre or something, right from the off. So no one was going in there at all, and it's been empty ever since. But yeah.
Wild.
Anyway,
I mean, yeah. So, I guess related to that, we started on talking about the Ford Maxi Cab, and at the moment in London, we've got one taxi that we can go out and buy, which is the LEVC. And oh, you looks
if you
like you
can
was paused about to say something.
if you can find one,
If you can find one, okay, that's a
because
separate
I was
topic in
in
itself.
I was in Ascot's the other day, and apparently they've sold their allocation of vehicles for 2026, and they only had 11 second-hand taxis available purchased. So yeah, and apparently the factory have got a large stock of white ones, but no black ones. That's
Oh, you got
false.
plenty. You can have a whole fleet then, Jamie.
Oh yeah, yeah. I might go in there and see if I can get a deal on swapping mine in. What do you reckon?
Well, this is a good topic. So basically, I bumped into a lovely gent in the Shell petrol station on Old Street. Again, me just going wild with all my petrol excursions.
Yeah.
And he basically said, I don't know why, because he seemed like he'd been out for a while. He goes, "Oh, what's better? Is it buying or renting a cab? Buying or renting a cab?" And I thought, like, I can understand if I'm having this conversation with someone who just got into it, but surely, if you've been out in the game long enough, you would have kind of an idea that the more long term you are, the more it makes sense to buy a cab. But let's have a bit of discussion on it. What do you think, Jamie?
I think let's go back in time. And when I first got out, it was definitely more beneficial. More beneficial to buy because over a long period of time, you saved quite a lot of money over renting. Um, but the current situation, I think, is a little bit more closely matched because you can rent a TXE from anything from like £300 a week up to £400 a week, depending on the sort of age of the cab that you want to rent. Um, I've got a friend who's renting off of our friend, and he's got a 74 plate that he's had from new. He actually was the first person to drive it, and he's paying £375 a week for it. Um, when you take into account if you're just PCPing a new cab at around the same time, with insurance, a set of tyres, possibly a year, and meter rental, overall costs, and things like that, road tax, you're probably paying around £350 a week.
Yeah.
maybe even a little bit more, £360 a week. So there isn't a massive difference between renting and owning, because in actual fact, you're not actually owning it if you're PCP in it, because you've still got a balancing payment at the end. Now, if you used to buy that on hire purchase, I think you'd find it would actually cost you more over the 5 years to buy than what it would to rent. Obviously, the benefits of buying is at the end of the 5 years, if you have it on hire purchase, you own the vehicle outright. So you have an asset. The problem comes is to how much that asset is worth after 5 years. If LEVC are going to bring out a new taxi, or if, Allied Vehicles manage to get this transit licensed, what would the resale value be of a 5-year-old TXE with, let's say, 150,000 miles on the clock? So it's a bit of an unknown quantity at the moment, whereas you could sort of roughly judge with the TX4 and the Fairways before it, TX1, TX2, you roughly knew what it would be worth after 5 years. So if you're the type of person that's going to buy a taxi on PCP and then swap it in every 5 years, there's not a lot of difference between owning and renting. It's only really, really beneficial if you buy on hire purchase, pay it off, then you've got an asset at the end to either just keep and become freehold, as you have, or to trade in against a newer cab, which obviously lowers down your monthly outgoings on the finance on the newer one, or the brand new one when you buy it, by trading in the one you already have. So it's swings and roundabouts. It's all down to personal choice, I think. Some people don't like the commitment of owning their own taxi, so that's why they opt to rent. Other people might have situations where, we've got colleagues that live abroad and come over and work for a few weeks and then go back and then come. There's no point in them owning a taxi. My personal circumstances were, because of where I live and the mileage I do going in and out of town, and the fact that I wanted a white one, no one would rent me a white one doing the mileage that I'm doing. So I had no option but to buy. And my initial thoughts were to keep it for 5 years, 4 or 5 years, give it back, and then go again. But with the future of LEVC up in the air and whether they're actually going to produce a new taxi or not, I might actually be paying off the balancing payment and keeping the thing. So who knows? Unless, of course, I go into Ascot's next week or when it's due for a service very soon, and they go, oh, look, we've got lots of white ones here. Would you like to have a very good deal and change now? And it probably would be, oh, yes, please.
I think that's the thing that's kind of made this situation a little bit more difficult, and you've alluded to it at the beginning there, is that years ago it was diesel cab to diesel cab, and that had had enough years to kind of work out how much it's worth, and you could always work out the residual value of these afterwards.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, because of obviously LEVC slowing down their production of vehicles, we don't know whether it's going to be a fully electric vehicle coming, in which case there might be quite a high premium on the vehicles we've got, because there's the petrol extenders. They're going to be, I would like to think, in high demand. But then conversely, we've seen in the past that TfL chopped 3 years off the diesels. Who's to say that they might go, you know what, we're going to get rid of the range extenders?
Exactly.
So all of these things really play into the long-term play here, because we know now that you might not be able to get the full 15 years, which then affects the sums, basically.
I've seen an email where TfL were proposing to launch a consultation on all newly licensed taxis being zero emissions at the tailpipe, which is a bit of an oxymoron, really, because if it's zero emissions at the tailpipe, that means it's an electric vehicle, which means it wouldn't have a tailpipe.
Just a stick on one that just looks like...
Yeah, maybe you just put on them chrome bits, the bits, you're probably too young.
I do, yeah, they'll chrome tips
on the end of the exhaust just to make it look a bit flashy, and maybe we'll just have one of them glued to the back bumper to make it look like it's a tailpipe. A bit like some of the newer cars now, where they've got these sort of twin exhausts coming out the back, and if you put your hands through, you can go straight through. There's nothing there.
Or only one of the pipes is real.
Yeah, or one of them's real, or none of them are real when it comes out underneath somewhere because of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so when I bought my cab, the sums were kind of simple. It's like if you're in it long term, then you're better off to eventually somewhat own the cab. PCP was a good kind of middle ground where in the short term you was better off than renting, but obviously there's no asset at the end of it. The best thing to do is anyone's thinking about this is to use some of the AI tools to work this out. 'Cause it's so simple now. You can plug all the numbers in, and I've literally done it just whilst we've been here talking about this.
Oh, I
So
wonder
if
what
we
you said.
was that sorry?
I said I wondered what you was doing there, typing
So,
away.
well, if we assume okay, we know that TXEs range from all different kinds of costs, so £320 ish up to like 400 depending on age, right? So if we just put that £350 to weekly rent a TXE, and we assume if you was to buy a TXE on finance, it's £275 a week. I've just kind of inflated my figures because mine was about £250 a week.
Yeah. Interest rates since you bought
interest rates gone up, and I put £5,000 down. So I don't know what the sort of weekly repayments or whatever, including. So I've got here other costs to obviously of owning. Insurance, if we assume, is about £1,600 a year. It might be more than that now. It's £31 a week, and a maintenance fund of say £30 a week, and then licensing works out about £2 a week because you've got to get a TFI overhaul. There's probably other things, MOTs and stuff, but that should come under your maintenance fund. It's about £12 a week cheaper to buy your cab outright on those figures. And then obviously at the end of the 5 years, you've then, like you say, got the asset. So not swings and roundabouts really. It's just like, can you play the long game on this? If you're thinking about getting out in 5 years, like if you're thinking about retiring in 5 years, then of course it doesn't make sense to lump yourself up with a cab. Or does it? Because you pay off a cab weekly, and in 5 years' time you want to go retire, you can then sell the cab for a lump sum, and then you've got a little bit of money to launch you into your retirement. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, mine, the finance on mine, bearing in mind I'm paying a little bit more because of the extra mileage I'm doing. Over 48 weeks, because I never work it out, over 52 weeks, because most garages will give you a 4-week holiday, over throughout the year. Works out at £283.25 per week.
You said it's PCP or HP?
PCP.
How much, sorry?
£283.25 per week. So my insurance is £47 a week. £48 a week.
Throwing more spanners in the works there. So I was just waiting for that AI to load.
And you got meter. And if you say £500 for a set of tyres, plus £165 for the meter, £110 for TFL, £110 in MOTs is another £885. Divide that by 48 weeks, you got another £20 a week to put on top of that.
Yep, I've got it. Yeah.
So £273 plus 50 plus 20, £343 a week over 48 weeks. Did it quicker than your AI, didn't I?
Indeed. Well, my AI was there, but I've got to go back in and properly do it. If I was sat down doing it properly rather than doing it whilst mid-recording a podcast. Yeah, it is. Basically, the TLDR, the too long I didn't read, it's all circumstantial. You've got to look at your circumstances. Because at the end of the day, if you rent and, we're in Easter holidays right now, or you want to go away for the summer, you think, you know what? Just give it back.
Unless you've signed for a 48-week contract, like a lot of places do make you do now, make you sign for a contract for a year, which allows you a certain amount of holidays during the year. The one benefit of renting is, what we've recently seen with COVID. where drivers were really stressing over the payments of their cabs and things like that. Whereas if you rented, you just went, see you later, bye, I'm off. I'm going
But
to
then
drive.
there was the with that situation, there was the opposite rebound, wasn't there? Where not enough, a lot of the diesel sell off, not enough proprietors had cabs, and I had a cab sat there, and I was like, a load of drivers can't get to work or get a cab. Oh, there's loads of work on the street. All
I'm
that
going to work.
COVID pain has now been erased. I'm going
Yeah.
to be out here. For some days it was pretty much one in, one out most days. But yeah,
So that's one benefit. And if you fall ill or whatever, you can just hand the cab back. Even if you've got a year's contract or whatever, no proprietor's going to come after you if you're seriously ill and you have to give the cab back. So that's another benefit. The other benefit is if it goes wrong, not your problem. You just phone the garage and say to them, "Cab's broken down. Can I have a fresh one, please?" If the ashtray gets full up, can I go and get a clean one, please? Well, they don't have ashtray anymore.
they probably won't have any clean ones. They'll all be
Yeah,
dirty.
that was a joke. But yeah, anything like that, years ago, one of the benefits was if you had an accident, you didn't have to pay. But most proprietors now make you pay the excess.
Yes, yeah.
But the thing is, if it is your fault, if the accident is your fault, normally most garages have got a spare cab that you can use whilst yours is being repaired. If in the case of you're owning your own cab and you have an accident, it's your fault, you've got to go and rent another cab while you're still paying for the one that you're buying as well. If it isn't your fault, there's loads of accident management companies out there that will rip everybody off. That's a topic for another show. And they're being brought into question at the moment, so it might be a very good topic for another show. But yeah, where they'll loan you a cab and they charge the third party's insurance at exorbitant rates of like £285 a day rental for the cab, which is ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, I think those are the main benefits to renting. The benefits to owning are that you are always in the same cab. Whereas if you are renting, a lot of proprietors, if you're doing quite a lot of mileage, will switch you out of one cab and put you in another one to keep the mileage down because of the warranties on the TXE. They might move you around, in different cabs just to keep mileages down and things like that. So it's not always guaranteed that you're always going to be in the same cab. But recently I have noticed that a lot of drivers that rent seem to stick with the same cab that they rented for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something about in the olden days, and maybe it's only people that are doing exceptionally high mileages where the proprietor will take you out of one and stick you in another one to keep the mileage down on the vehicles, which is understandable, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, it's PCP and renting. If you have no preference on colour or anything like that, then there isn't really a great deal of difference. And if you want the peace of mind of not having any commitment, probably renting's the best way to go for you.
Sweet. Nice
If you
little
want-
summary. I'm gonna segue this when you were saying about high mileage on cabs into our next point. A cab service in the world that has exceptionally high mileage, and it's my recent trip to New York.
Well, that was high mileage, wasn't it? Going to New York just to get a taxi.
Yeah, true. Could have got a taxi all the way there.
Yeah.
No, so I've done it as part of the YouTube channel. I wanted to uncover a few things like where do New York cab drivers eat, how does the cab licensing system and everything work? Why would you not be an Uber driver? Because it's, as I learned, it's as long to become a yellow cab driver as it is to be an Uber driver. So it's like, well, what's the point? What's the difference between them? And learn about, their taxi rental systems, because they famously, if people don't know, one of their most popular options, because you have to rent the medallion, which is then affixed to the, it gets a bit confusing. The medallion is kind of like our badge, but it's affixed to the vehicle. You don't own the medallion, you rent the medallion from someone who has the medallion. And you also then have to rent the car. You could own a medallion, but then rent a car, or you could own a car, but then rent a medallion. It gets really confusing. And the popular thing they do is they actually go by shifts. You rent a shift. Most commonly, you either rent a day shift or you rent a night shift. And do you know?
It'd be like
Sorry.
what they call a journeyman over here, where two people share a cab, and one does days and one does nights, and they call a journeyman. So
Well, that used to be the case, didn't it, in London? And we've even heard of Asher from Sherbert Taxis talk about how he sort of wants to bring this back because of the rising costs of business and
yeah,
such.
he wants to bring it back via an app, doesn't he? He's been planning this for years and years, and it still hasn't materialised yet. But maybe someone we could get on the show and see how he's progressing with it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he's quite forward thinking, and obviously knows it from the point of view of the drivers. Because most of the time, most drivers do fall into very similar rhythms and routines, right? If you actually had something, and I'm sure that probably would be what an app like his would show. It's like, look, it sits empty this amount of this time. Like you're wasting your time, or not wasting your time. You're wasting the cab's time almost. But yeah, I was surprised in New York just how expensive their cabs are to like work and rent. Do you have any idea, Joe? I know I might have shared the numbers with you, but do you, off the top of your head, do you reckon?
I know that not so much in New York, but around other parts of the country, I know their rental is a lot more than what London is. I mean, let's just go back to when I first started driving a cab. Just a quick example. A taxi at the time, a brand new cab, the one that I rented for the first 2 weeks when I got my license, was an E-Reg FX4S Plus. Now, brand new, that cab was about 15 grand. Yeah. And I was paying £175 a week for that. Yeah. So you would have thought when the taxis went up to 30,000 that the rent would go up to £350 a week. We're now at 70 odd thousand. You would think that the rent would be £700 a week, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
The value of the
Yeah.
vehicle. Obviously, it don't work like that because that would make the job totally unviable, 100% unviable, because there'd be certain weeks where you'd probably go out and maybe not even make enough money to pay the rental on the cab. Other weeks when you go out and you make more than enough to pay the rental on the cab and live. But yeah, I had heard that it was very expensive in New York, but I didn't know quite how expensive it was in New York.
So, if you do, most of the guys I spoke to were on day shifts, which means you've got to take the cab back at 5 p.m. Absolutely stupid idea that most of the cabs all have to go back at the same time. So, there's this weird lull in the day where if you're just trying to hail a cab, a lot of the day drivers have got to go take it back for the night man to take it. $100. So, you get the cab all week, effectively, if you want to, of course, but you have to pay $600 to only work days. If you say, right, you know what, I can't decide, or I'm just starting out, to get the cab fully in the same way that we would do in London, so the figures we mentioned earlier, say, I don't know, 350, 400, whatever it is for a TXE, you have to pay $1,100. $1,100 per week.
A week.
Mental. And getting in, their fares were fairly similar to ours in that, so what, I think that's about 850 quid a week their cabs are. And their fares were fairly similar. So like, most little sort of mile and a bit jobs that lasted about 15 minutes or so were with a tip, in the range of about $16 to $21, which, again, it's probably like the 15 sort of quids and whatever that we're used to in town.
What sort of vehicles were they driving? Because I've seen a lot of them are these Nissan NV200s now.
Well, that was cited to be the cab of like New York's future, because you got to remember that obviously New York and America, like to have a Japanese model come in versus the Fords, which obviously a lot of them they were like Ford Crown Victorias back in the day, like these weird sort of saloons.
The old checker cabs back in the day, the old checker. You're probably too old. You're too young, Tom.
I know I'm nodding. I'm like, yeah.
You're too young to remember a checker cab. Quite distinctive, a checker cab. Look up what a checker cab is. Used to have tip seats in it, the same as a London taxi, I believe. But yeah, they've sort of phased out. They've disappeared. They're not made anymore. So as you say, there was Fords.
So yeah, there's a lot of them at the moment. But basically, they decided on the Nissan NV200 like we got in London. I think it was like a petrol version, and they were thinking, well, this is going to be great because they'll be able to do electric. Well, that's the way we'll go, disabled, accessible, etc. So that was cited as the cab of the future. And then I don't know if Nissan pulled out the market or they decided not on it, but they chose it over the Ford competitor because they've got like little Ford sort of transit vans and such. Currently, there's quite a few of them swimming around in circulation, different types of cabs. There's only 5 right now if you want to do it from brand new. I think 2 of those are Teslas. And their cabs only last for 7 years.
7 years.
7 years is the lifespan of their cabs.
Mind you, I suppose if they're working, I mean, that's a little bit different to London because if they're working continuously 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, that's a lot of mileage on a vehicle and a lot of wear and tear on a vehicle as well, whereas ours don't. As I've always said, we've got probably one of the most underutilised fleet of taxis in the world because a lot of ours are owner-driven and they're parked up on owners' driveways for the vast majority of the time rather than actually working. You go anywhere else in the country and you'll find that, you go to Liverpool and they might... I know a driver that had, in Scotland, you know him as well, Neil McCulloch. He shared a cab with his dad, years ago, before the pandemic. And his mum used to drive it in the morning. His dad used to drive it in the afternoon through to the evening. Neil used to do the night shift. And they had 2 weekend drivers on the cab as well. A day man and a night man. So there was 5 people working the same cab.
Wow.
So that cab was literally running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You can imagine the sort of punishment that cab would go through compared to its London brother or sister that would probably, have one driver on it that might go and do sort of 4 or 5 days a week. And it'll sit on his driveway for the rest of the time. So for the vast majority of his life, it just sat there doing nothing. Whereas you've got this cab in Scotland that's literally trundling around the streets without a second's break, really.
Wow. That's just mad. But I mean, it does make sense that it seems so weird and counterintuitive that going back in time, the sort of split shift thing was just the norm because most cabs were rented from proprietors. I'm talking like the 60s or whatever. And now that we've actually got the technology that enables us to work out, right, that you spend like 90% of your time working these hours. There's no point you having the cab. We're not able to work this out and say it's not cost efficient for you to have it that long. Here's an extra £100 a week to just let someone else come and take it off your drive for you or whatever the situation may be. So yeah, very brutal for the New York cab drivers. It works out that their rent premium over London is 132% plus. It basically saying if earnings are similar on both sides, New York City driver is handing back nearly 3/4 of that in just rent, leaving very little amount before you account for fuel and any personal overheads. It's mental,
mad, isn't it? So
that's why so many of them. Sorry to interrupt, but they would like, I work 7 days a week. I was like, how often do you work? 7 days a week, and I was like, do you have a target or whatever? They're like, no, I just work. They can't have a target because they just have to work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a target these days. I just work.
Yeah, I think it'd be futile for them, but yeah, wild. Absolutely
wild. And the thing is, I suppose if we went to that sort of model here in London, the main attraction, as most people state, to this job is the freedom. Yeah, freedom to work when you want to work, for how long you want to work, have a day off when you want. Do an extra day if you want. And if you went to that sort of model, it would take that freedom away. And how many more drivers would we lose if that happened? Because it then becomes just like working a job. If you're going to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and finishing at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever, there's no difference to that to driving a bus, really, or whatever. Yeah. It's not giving you the freedom anymore.
And I think that's kind of the way it works there because, like, a lot of people spoke to it said it takes them a month from the idea to then actually be driving in the cab.
Yeah.
So for intents and purposes, it is kind of a bit like that, but then you don't have the freedoms of driving, like say driving a bus. But then again, employment rights in the States aren't as good as what they are over here. Driving a bus here, you would get your holiday pay, you get your sick pay and stuff like that. Whereas in the States, I guess the lines between being employed versus being self-employed they're a lot closer, really. One other thing I want to finish up on that, which will segue us onto our next point, is the fact that most of the cabs there were all running on curb systems. Now, it was a great system because you have the screen in the back which tells you the fare as it's going up, so you haven't got to look up at the meter or whatever, it's there. And it even breaks down all the individual extras and costs. So when we got our fixed fare in from the JFK into Manhattan, it's a $75 fixed fare. And then once you get into the central zone, there's like a charge for that. There's a charge for the other bit. And then when you get the printout, it's all on there as well. But it's mad that everyone all has this same system. And because of that, there's so much data online from the taxi and limousine commission for them to share what percentage of their drivers work when, how they work, where they work, because they're pretty much all on the curb system. And some of them said that they can take on Uber jobs because that's part of curb. And because I said to him, I said, well, why don't you just work Uber? He's like, no, if I'm a taxi driver, I can do street hails where I get a much greater commission, but I can also work on Uber. Leading us on to our next point.
Curb in London have just introduced a new feature to their system, which is, I believe it's called Flow, the Flow system, where you will be sent jobs from partner providers. They say they're going to partner with various different providers, but the one that they are partnering with at the moment is Uber. So if you're on the curb system and you opt in to this new Flow system, I believe it's called, you will be offered Uber jobs. They state that it will be the metered fare and it'll be zero commission. Plus, you're going to get a £375 sign-up bonus. Where have we heard that before, eh? But yeah, it'll be Uber. How many of you are actually going to opt in to the system? It's quite funny at the airport the other day. You were sitting there having something to eat with a couple of other drivers, and someone walked past the back of us, and their phone went off like they was being offered a job, and it was the Uber chimes that we could hear on their phone. Didn't quite see who it was because they sort of walked past the back of us, but yeah. I think they made a sharp exit out of the canteen and disappeared into the darkness, out into the feeder park. But yeah, there are obviously drivers on there. I don't think there's as many as Uber claims are on there, and obviously this is another way of them trying to get the black cab trade on their platform. Because another bit of news this week was that Uber have bought Black Lane. Black Lane is the chauffeur company that have always pitched themselves as a cut above the rest of all the private hire companies, saying that they are a chauffeur company and not, a minicab company as such. And Uber have just they've bought them outright, 100% own Black Lane now. Black Lane is saying it's a new chapter in their future and an exciting new chapter. Brings into question as to how Uber are going to incorporate this into their model, because they've already got Uber exec, and the Black Lane drivers obviously opted to go and work for Black Lane and buy more expensive cars because they didn't want to do Uber type jobs. So how is this all going to work together? Are Uber going to still run them as two separate companies? Uber are basically trying to buy up everything that they haven't been able to destroy. So, Black Lane, Curb, they're partnering with Curb. They're just trying to decimate the competition so that they have the whole market for themselves.
Yeah, it's a similar sort of model that you see with big pharma does it. Big pharmaceutical companies, say like a GSK or whatever. If someone brings out, a new form of toothpaste that is wildly different from, say, I don't know if Colgate's GSK or whatever. This is where I get sued. Who knows?
The insurance for that?
But no,
is the insurance?
it's how it works, because they're a big company. They can't be agile and think of these new ideas like the Black Lane idea. So just a way of kind of controlling the market a bit. They may or may not use it at all. They might buy out that company and go, you know what, we're going to kind of disband this. It's just more to control the market. They can buy it and then do how they see with it, whether it rolls into their exec category. But very interesting on the curb front though, because it removes one of the kind of friction points that a cab driver could see with accepting a job. It's very similar actually. What it reminds me of is these Just Eat and Deliveroo apps that have things called dark kitchens. I don't know, for the viewers who and listeners who don't know necessarily about this, it's that you can order from, say, Nando's or KFC or whatever, but it doesn't
come from there.
actually come from Nando's or KFC. It comes from one kitchen that is approved by KFC and Nando's, and it'll be prepared in exactly the same place next to Burger King, next to McDonald's. It'll just be one kitchen where this all happens. And some of these dark kitchens, what they've been doing is they've actually been advertising, let's say like a smaller independent. It could be, say, a Wagamama's or something like that, but then they'll actually list it in a local place as though it's a small independent restaurant that you just don't know about. It might be around the corner somewhere. You think, oh, I've never seen that before. Oh, I'll buy that because it's different from Wagamama's, and where it's actually the same as if you was to order it from Wagamama's, but is then presented in a. And this is the equivalent with taxis, I guess. And it's really difficult, and it's probably can erode away at more drivers, because rather than having to open an Uber app, I think a cab driver doing that would see the Uber app and think, oh, this is wrong. The moral compass is already awakened when they open up the app and go, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. It's now the other way around. There is no Uber being sort of shown or presented to them at the start. It's a really weird.
It's going to be interesting to see, the fallout of this, as to whether drivers accept it, whether they opt in, because you've actually got to physically opt in. You're not going to be offered the jobs without opting in. So whether drivers actually opt into it, whether they actually accept the jobs, or whether the opposite happens and drivers vote with their feet, especially owner drivers that have got curb systems in their cabs, whether they go, right, you're doing this, get that out of my cab, I'm going somewhere else. Yeah, I'm going to go and have another credit card system fitted rather than your Uber in disguise. So it's going to be really interesting. I mean, it's just like when, go back many years when Halo started offering minicabs on their app, and, all the drivers, oh, that's it, dump the app. And quietly, probably more than 50% of them stayed on there and, turned the volume down on their phone when they was in CAFs and things like that, so the other drivers couldn't hear when they got offered a job. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, what the outcome of this is. Personally, if it was in my cab, it wouldn't be tomorrow. It'd be out. I'd have it taken out. That's just my principles. It'd be gone.
Well, my sentiment I want to add on this, and I've sort of covered it in a previous video of mine, and people say, well, what's different with Uber versus, say, other private hire firms versus your Free Now versus your Get, whatever? Like, it's just an app. It's coming through this curb system. I've had curb in my cab for a while. I'll take it. Curb, taxi, whatever. The thing is that Uber as a platform want to be the everything app, the everything Amazon-like service for transport. You can book planes, you can book trains, you can book coaches, everything on Uber. So they obviously really want to have everything. They want to have taxis on there. They want to have access to our disabled accessibility, our bus lanes, and to a degree, our meter, because obviously they're going to be coming to our meter prices. So they're going to have influence and sway over our meter. So by doing this, you might think, oh, it's just one quick job. Oh, it's through Curb. I've had it for ages. You are giving these operators, and obviously the biggest one, access to taxis. And we remain stronger because we already are an icon. We already got all those features that are so enviable that any other transport fleet in the world would give so much to have, so standardized. So do not give it to them. We are stronger if we keep it amongst ourselves.
Definitely. So hence, as I said, if it was fitted in my cab, tomorrow morning it will be being taken out and I will be going elsewhere. Because, you can never say never. Let's say that. You can never say never. But at this point in the time, my principles would never, ever allow me to do an Uber job. So the fact that it's there and the fact that the Kerber have done this partnership with Uber would be enough for me to have it stripped out straight away. I know a lot of drivers are probably under contract to them, especially those that have recently had the new systems fitted. And it's funny how they've announced this after this new system's been rolled out, because they've obviously got loads of drivers to sign new contracts for maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever. But yeah, I wouldn't be happy. Let's put it like this, and I definitely wouldn't be opting in, and it will be out at my earliest convenience.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. Really, it's like you say, if they've had to update the system, presumably it's the update has been for this. And this is exactly, I mean, I'm reading the article here on Taxi Point. This is exactly the same as what's happened in New York, where I think it was it says here 2023, curb flow was rolled out 2023 across US markets, including New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And, you know, maybe for them it is fine because they don't have as sort of tough and rigorous, standardized a system, you know, that their cabs aren't all disabled accessible, for instance. They don't have to do the knowledge, but, you know, it will slowly make their market smaller and smaller. It will diminish their taxis and they'll slowly become more private hire focused. So that's my stance on it anyway,
Well, that brings us on nicely to another app at the moment, Black Cab app, which is blackcab.com, which you're now starting to see on a lot of taxis, because I know Cabvision have had the Supersides put on a lot of their rental fleet. And I'm on the WhatsApp group for the blackcab.com app because I was on the Unify WhatsApp group before that. And there's loads of drivers on there saying, "Oh, is this app actually working? You know, I'm not had a job on it yet. I've had it switched on every single day, and it's not. You know, I've not been offered anything at the moment." For an app, a brand new app that's literally just gone into the App Store like 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, for there to be a critical mass of passengers to keep you happy every single day of the week and offer you a job, it's not going to happen straight away. You know, you have to get a balance. And the idea with starting an app is you have to get the critical mass of drivers on there to start with, so that when a passenger does download the app and request a taxi, there are enough cabs available to service that passenger. Because the problem is, if that passenger cannot get a cab, then they will use something else. And once they've used something else and they get a cab straight away, they will not go back again. So you need the mass of drivers first, the mass of cabs on the app to be able to attract the passengers. So if you are on the blackcab.com app, give it a chance, switch it on, log in, give it a chance, make yourself available on it so that when passengers download the app and request a taxi, they can see that there are actually cabs available. Which also brings me on to another point. The last company dinner, I left there and thought, I will use the Jump app to get a cab over to Great Suffolk Street. So I stood there for half an hour in the city by Grocers Hall trying to get a cab on Jump. Yeah? There was loads of cabs around me showing on the app. And I kept requesting it. So I thought, I'll make it easy because I'm standing in Princes Street. We'll make it easier. I'll walk down to the bank, yeah, into Cornhill to see whether it'll make it easier for them to find me. So I went down there and kept trying. In the end, I walked down Queen Victoria Street. But halfway down Queen Victoria Street, where I hailed a cab and said to the driver, "Has it all of a sudden got really busy tonight?" And he said, "No, it's dead." So I was a bit disappointed, to say the least.
Yeah, that is odd, really. I mean, whether because they could see what the job is and they're like, well, I'm not doing that. But then it doesn't matter because, it's the thing. It's you could sort of think that with Free Now or Get or whatever, because it's like, well, they're going to take commission. I'd rather hold out a bit and wait for like a street hand or whatever. I'm not going to drive 10 minutes to that guy to get a job, but you might as well, accept it. And I've had pretty good results with using the Jump app. I had it once on a weekend in Canary Wharf. I thought, like a Saturday evening in Canary Wharf, I thought, well, I ain't got a hope in hell in flagging a cab down on the street. My only saviour is Jump. And it was my saviour. I had a cab come along and it worked perfectly for me. So it's very odd that it didn't work in that scenario, especially if you could see them circling.
The funny thing is, every cab I've held to one of the dinners or back, right, when they ask me where I've been, because some of them recognise me and they ask me where I've been and I tell them, and, they realise who I am. And every single one of them, and this is bar none, right, every single one of the taxi drivers has said, "Oh, that's on me, mate." Right? And I haven't accepted it at all. Right? And just a message to anyone that picks me up, yeah, you're working, yeah. You don't need to pick me up for free. I can quite easily walk, yeah. So, every single one of them I've given the fare plus a tip. Even they've offered to do it for nothing. And I don't want anyone to do it for nothing, because you're working, you're a working cab. You're out there to earn money, earn a living. So, don't offer me the ride for free, because I'm not going to accept it anyway.
Passengers ask me this. They go, "Oh, like, do you get any perks? Did you get into cabs for free or whatever?" I'm like, "No, you pay more.
Yeah,
you can't pay the metered amount to another cab driver. Like, it's impossible. Like, that's not allowed. That's just a big faux pas. Yeah, driver. Oh, can you spare me the 20p, please, driver?" So no, you have to give a tip more.
Yeah. So, only thing left for this week before we wrap this show up is your funeral for the streets this week.
So if you're listening on audio through a podcast app, you will get some lovely somber music.
You might get somber music on the video as well. It's just that I've put it in the last one. And the one before
then.
It's just last one. I've forgot to put it in.
No dramas. So it's a bit of an older one. It's been gone for a while now, but Villiers Street departed for the trade. They've put a rising bollard there. You already know the score. From midday through to 5 a.m, it's no use anymore. By the green shelter, mugs in hand, where cabbies took a break, a nod, a chat, a bit of life between the jobs you take. It wasn't wide, it wasn't clean, pedestrians everywhere. You edged through it on instinct, mate, on judgment, nerve and care. In off Embankment Place, if you knew the play, a tidy little cut through that shaved good time away. Past Gordon's wine bar, low lit front, by Charing Cross Station's side, and Embankment Station there, with waves you had to ride. That was a driver's sort of road. It worked if you knew how. Not written down, not signposted, you had to earn it somehow. But now that bollard has the say, it rises, cold and clean, right when the job is on the line, right when you should have been seen. No reading roads, no little wins, no taking pressure off, just sitting there, engine ticking, watching chances scoff. So here's to roads that knew the trade, and drivers passing through. Villiers Street, still on the map, just not for me and you. Villiers Street.
While we're on the subject of somber things, and just before we finish up, yeah, there has been a downturn in work over the last week or so. I think the private schools packed up a couple of weeks ago for Easter. The Easter holidays seem to be all over the place at the moment. I know one of my granddaughters has already packed up school, but Rachel doesn't actually, and she works in a school, doesn't actually pack up until today. So Thursday, Maundy Thursday. So that's why it's all over the place. Instead of all the holidays being at the same time and we having a couple of weeks of pain, we seem to have 3 or 4 weeks of pain nowadays whenever there's a holiday. Whenever there's a half-term holiday, it used to be 1 week of pain. Now we seem to have 2 or 3 weeks of pain because all the schools don't sort of coordinate and have it at the same time. I've always found Easter to be the worst time of year to work the cab. Always. Yeah. In 35 years, it's always been the worst time of year to work the cab. And to the point where we started going away over the Easter holidays, over the Easter bank holiday, just to get away from the cab. the last couple of years I've had lots of tours. This year, not so much, because we've got someone throwing missiles all over the place at the moment, which means that American tourists are a little bit scared to fly. So not that much going on this weekend. So I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, well, this will obviously go out slightly after Easter, so let us know in the comments down below how you found it. I generally find any bank holiday as pretty much a write-off as well. So people are like, oh, you excited for the bank holiday? It's like, nope, because I've got to take my money in 4 days in the week. And if it's already slow anyway, then yeah. So I always write off most bank holidays. Obviously, it's what, rate 3 or whatever on a bank holiday, or rate whatever. I couldn't care, because you need that plus some more to fill in the shortfall. So
Anyway, you're going away over the Easter weekend anyway.
I'm going away over the Easter weekend. Yeah, it's happened so fortuitously. I didn't even realise when I saw that it was Easter weekend. I was jumping for joy. So I cannot wait.
Well, I might take a few days off next week to carry on building my camper van I've been building for 3 years now and haven't got very far with it, except putting a bed in it and windows and skylights. So I want to crack on with that, get the electrics in, get the heater in, at least so it's usable, and then get the walls and floor in. Well, the floor's in, but I've just got some nice floor to put in there. And then get the ceiling up. I'm going to put some of them nice panels that Tom's got behind him as the ceiling.
They're actually affixed. They're actually on the wall now.
They're actually fixed.
They're there.
They're fixed properly as well, aren't they?
Put them up for me. I didn't even have to lift a finger. She done them all.
She done them?
Yeah.
Oh, you lazy bugger.
No, I just came back. She done them. I was like, bloody hell, you know? So,
it's nice, doesn't it? Your new studio looks very nice, doesn't it? Mine still looks like a crap hole behind me. I've got to...
You've not seen the other side of it where I've just dumped all my stuff, you know? So, yeah, and then I'll be working on the garden next week, I think. That's probably much more fruitful than actually going to work.
Yeah. Productive than going to work, yeah.
Yep.
Don't forget, if you do watch the video, the vast majority of you haven't subscribed, so please subscribe to Cab Chat. And if you want to come on the show, I think what I'm going to do is put a form on the website that if you want to come on the show, you can fill it out, and then when we set the dates that we're going to record, we can notify you if you're available that date. You can come on. All you need is your iPhone and AirPods or whatever, and you can actually come on and take part in the show if you want to.
Yeah, you can bring a topic, you can bring your expertise, you know, so long as it's like, you know, PG sensitive, then bring a topic, bring expertise, because anything, even if it's just a rough discussion about something that gets you gripe when you're driving in the cab, that you need to share with other drivers and people that are friends and family of the trade, I guess.
Yep. And we didn't get onto my highways agency rant, so we'll do that in the next show.
We'll see you there.
Until next time, see you then.
Bye-bye.